Hi, let's do a huge book haul. Hi, I'm Colleen Delaney. If you're new here, I talk about books and writing. In the description, I always put links to my newsletter and some of the books that I've written, especially The Hedge Witch, which is coming out next week on May 14th. So give that a click if you're interested. We are having a very intense storm. So it's supposed to storm all day though, and I can't film tomorrow, so I need to just film through it. I apologize. There's a very small chance we'll have a tornado, during which I will pause and get the heck in the basement with my one child who is homesick with strep throat. But I hope the thunder isn't too loud and I can maybe edit around it. So last week was my birthday, and I like to spend my birthday just buying all the books my little heart could desire, which is exactly what I did. I got 21 books total, and they are going to be my reads for the next couple months. I tend to buy a ton of books in May and use this book haul kind of as like my summer TBR. I'll still get a couple more things over the summer, and I'll still get my book of the month picks and everything, but this is going to be the bulk of my TBR. I go into this day with a list of books that I want, and actually I found 0 in stores. So then I kind of looked at my list. That's not true, I found 1. Then I kind of looked at my list and ordered some from Amazon that I knew I really wanted to read. But it was a weird sort of day in that, because I was really surprised that a lot of these books were not in store that I had put on my list. But it was okay. Ordered some from Amazon, found a bunch of other ones that I really am excited to read. I'm gonna do these in the order in which I got them, which means beginning with a book my husband brought home, because my husband was in Europe for last week or the week before my birthday, and in a bunch of different countries, and he really wanted to get me a book, but he wanted it to be kind of like a funny gift. So he got me a Cressley Cole book in German. And his biggest thing is he wanted a half-naked guy on the cover. And when he was in the store, the woman who was helping him spoke English. And when she brought him this, he was like, "Oh, this is perfect." And she was like, "Oh, does your wife read German?" And he was like, "She does not." So I don't even know which Cressley Cole that is. I should have Googled it. Oh my gosh. Let's see. That script is hard to read on its own. What the heck does that say? Verheißung des Dialekts? I don't know. If you speak German. What book is that? So that's my first one. I'm obviously not going to be able to read it, but I am going to enjoy having it on my shelf. Next, the first place I went on my birthday was I went to the small bookstore in my town, and I got 2 books there. I got The Guest by Emma Cline, which I've been like kind of wanting to read this for about a year since it came out. And I was just sort of like looking at everything they had. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get this book finally. I don't know much about it other than I think it's like rich people behaving badly, and you follow a woman who I think is of more of like a different class than everybody she's kind of, taking advantage of. So that sounded like a nice, like warm weather read. I did also just tell my husband, because I spend most of the summer outside watching the majority of the kids who live in my neighborhood, because our yard is just the one where everyone congregates. And I don't mind, because it's nice that my kids are all here and I don't have to keep track of whose house they're at. But I was like, I want to get a giant umbrella for the backyard and a little table, and then I can put my chair underneath it with a stack of books and maybe like a large iced tea or lemonade and read all summer. Doesn't that sound lovely? That sounds really nice. And then this was totally just like a birthday present to myself, because I usually wouldn't justify spending the money on it. But I got The Summer We Crossed Europe in the Rain by Kazuo Ishiguro, and it's the songs that he's written for Stacey Kent that are illustrated. And I actually already started reading this. I'm on page 14. But it's just got like different songs he's written and then an illustration to go with them. And it's really beautiful. And sometimes you just want to read like a really, really beautiful book. I don't usually buy myself like a hardcover graphic novel. Like I get the Laura Olympus ones, but I get those all in paperback. And this just really spoke to me. And normally I wouldn't spend the money on it because it was $22 for a book that I'll read quite quickly. But it just felt so gorgeous. And like, I had to do it. So next, I drove very far. So over an hour, probably like an hour and a half, maybe even longer, to Chicago. So I could go to the Last Chapter bookstore, which is Last Chapter bookshop, which is a new-ish romance bookshop in the Roscoe Village neighborhood of Chicago, which was fun for me to go to because I lived there when I was like 24. It was a very long time ago. But it's a really cute neighborhood. If you've ever like hung out in Chicago, Roscoe Village is a very cute neighborhood. But I went there to check it out. Now here was the bad thing. When I got there, they had so little stock, and I was a little confused about that. I was like, wow, they really don't carry that much and their shelves are kind of empty. But then the woman who was working told me, she was like, it was independent bookstore day on Saturday, which I was there like 5 days later. And I was like, oh, I forgot. Because that does always happen. I never shop on independent bookstore day because my birthday's right after it. And so I just, I'm going to shop on my birthday. But she said their stock was so depleted. So because of that, I'm thinking that I might, maybe in like August, plan a day to go back when their stock is more like beefed up, or maybe even in June. I don't know. But so what I did get there is I got The Lost Elemental by Tessa Hale. I actually don't know anything about this, but my publishing company said that she's a comp author for me and I hadn't read any of her books. So I was like, oh, they have a Tessa Hale. I'm going to grab it and read it because apparently we're comps. And she's got really pretty chapter headings in here that I thought looked really cool. And this is like a magical school type paranormal story. I then grabbed The Wolf and the Witch, which is the third book, but it's a novella in the Witch Collector series by Charissa Weeks. And I wanted to get a Charissa Weeks book really badly. And I thought that I'd be able to get the Witch Collector there. And she was like, we usually have it, but we sold out of it at independent bookstore day. So I grabbed this one though, because I know I'm going to read the whole series, but I'm just not going to be able to read this one right away because there's 2 books I have to read before it. But I just wanted to get it. And then lastly, I grabbed this one because I think this is a local author. It's One Little Mistake by Avery Maxwell. And I grabbed it because it's signed. So I was like, oh, I think that author probably lives nearby if she was autographing books there. And I want to support local authors. I don't know anything about her. It looks like it's just like a straightforward contemporary romance, which I tend to prefer contemporary over rom-com. So I thought it would be a fun one to get into. And also, it's a series. I'm not sure how many, I don't think it says in the front how many are, but there was like big stacks of it on a table there. So, but I thought if I love it, then I can keep going with the series. Yeah, oh, actually it is in the back because this is the Westbrooks Family Ties. So there's at least 5 books in it. Now let's get back in the car and go to the bookstore I used to work at. This was fun. I love going to the bookstore I used to work at. The funny thing is every time I go, I end up helping a customer, which is just weird. But I was talking to, only one person was in who worked there when I did. So, because obviously it's been since I worked at this bookstore, I stopped working there in 2009. So it's been a really long time, but a few people, I think there's 3 people total who still work there from when I did. And only one was in. And I was chatting with her and she was introducing me to some of the other people who work there now and mentioned like I'm a children's librarian and that I worked in the children's department when I worked there and everything. And then that woman went and helped a customer. And then like 2 minutes later, someone came, one of the younger people who works there, because they do employ a lot of like college students and stuff, came up to the woman who was checking me out. It was like, there's someone in the children's department who needs help with a 12-year-old boy who wants to read something about planes. And the woman's like, I don't really know anything. And then she looks at me, she's like, oh, could you help them? Which happens literally every time I'm there. So it was a little fun to stretch my brain. And I didn't do a great job because I'm not really familiar with the stock they have, but I recommended a series. Moving on. So they did not have any of the books I was looking for, which isn't that odd. There were 2 I thought they might have, they didn't. But so I was just like, I'm just gonna look around and see what I wanna get. So the first I picked was Witch of Wild Things by Raquel Vasquez Gilliand. And I've had this on my like Amazon TBR for like, I don't know when it came out, a very long time. And I was like, oh, I'll buy it now. I see it in person, I can buy it. Let's see when it came out. It came out in 2023, so I've probably had it on my TBR for about a year. It is a magical family story. Sage Flores is the main character. She's coming back to her hometown many years later after her younger sister died. And I know this has a romance in it, like a second chance romance about the guy. Ooh, he's got a good name. Tennessee Reyes. Broke her heart in high school, and I assume they're going to get back together. But it's got some botanist stuff in it, and I really like that. So I'm looking forward to it. Next, I got Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I couldn't remember if Book of the Month had this, but I was pretty sure they didn't. And because I saw it in paperback, I was like, I know I want to read this in the summer. And funnily enough, when I bought this, I thought this might be my Labor Day weekend book because I always pick a book to read over Labor Day weekend. And I know last year I was going to read Malibu Rising, but then I ended up not reading it till later in September. And the year before I was gonna read Daisy Jones and the Six, but then I ended up getting COVID, so I read it later. So maybe I'm gonna plan to read this Labor Day weekend and I'll actually read it in September, or maybe I'll read it over the summer at some point. But Carrie Soto is a minor character in Malibu Rising, and it's like about tennis, which I think I said this in my review of Malibu Rising. A lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, they don't sound particularly interesting to me, and then I flippin' love them. Like I was interested in Daisy Jones and the Six because my parents were huge Fleetwood Mac fans. Like I grew up listening to Fleetwood Mac. But like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I was like, maybe I'll like it. And I loved that book. And then Malibu Rising, I was like, California in the 80s. I'm not really into California. I'm not into the 80s. Loved that book. So not really into tennis. We'll probably love this book. Then I got The Great Believers by Rebecca Makkai. I have some questions for you, and I adored it. And my cousin told me that this book was so good when I said I liked, because she read I Have Some Questions for You also, but she didn't like it as much as I did, but she said she loved The Great Believers. So I was like, well, I should grab that and read that this summer. It's the 80s. It's the AIDS epidemic. Someone's in the 80s, and then you also have a 30 years later. And I really like dual timeline books. Those are like my favorites. So I'm looking forward to that one. Last, I got this book. I have heard about this book a ton, but I hadn't put it on my TBR, and then I saw it and I was like, oh, I should get this. And it's What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama, I think is how you say their last name. It's about a librarian in Tokyo. That sounds right up my alley. Also, it's not very long. This seems like a good book to read, outside on a nice day. It's 300 pages on the dot, but the pages are really short, so I look forward to that. Let's go to Barnes & Noble next. I tend to end my day with Barnes & Noble, and then after I go to Barnes & Noble, I see if I want to order anything off Amazon. And when I went to Barnes & Noble, again, they didn't have a lot of the books I thought they would have. But in their defense, some of my things were like, I wanted to get a Sophie Jordan book. They had a bunch of Sophie Jordan books, but they only had Sophie Jordan books that I had already read. And I also really particularly wanted a specific one, which I'll talk about in a minute. I wanted to get a book in the Highland Bride series by Lindsay Sands. They had like 4, but they were the 4 I've already read. So again, not really their fault. And then some of the other books that I asked for, they were like, we can order those really easily. We've had them before, but I don't know. I feel like if I'm going to order it, I might as well order it from Amazon. Okay, so the only book I ended up getting there was Lilith by Nikki Marmory, which is a Lilith retelling. One of my friends recommended it. She has not read it yet, but she was like, it's on my TBR. Let's both read it. We can talk about it. So I do really like, it's on the back. It's compared to Madeline Miller. So Circe and Song of Achilles, which those books are both phenomenal. So I really wanted to give this a try. The first line is, before Eve, there was Lilith. Lilith and Adam are equal and happy in the Garden of Eden until Adam decides Lilith should submit to his will and lie beneath him. She refuses and is banished forever from paradise. And then we just follow her because she becomes sort of like in Jewish and Christian mythology, a demon. And it's right up my alley. Okay, so those were all the books that I got in in-person shopping. And next we're gonna go to what I ordered from Amazon. As promised, I got a Highland Bride series by Lindsay Sands, The Falling for the Highlander. What number is this? I'm not even sure, but it's the one I was on. I think it's number 4 or 5. I've jumped a bit. It's Lady Muriel Carmichael and Dougal Buchanan. So I'll let you know how it is. These are crazy. These are like medieval romances, but always someone's trying to murder either the hero or the heroine or both. Usually there's a lot of injuries that no one has any business surviving in the medieval time period. Next, I got the last book I haven't read in the Rogue files, which is The Virgin and the Rogue by Sophie Jordan. And I've read this series completely out of order. This has been my Breaking Case of Emergency series for like a year. So I don't pick one up until I'm in like a bad book slump and then I read it. So I'm gonna save this until I'm in a book slump or in July, because I tend not to buy any new books in July. So I tend to want to read something I know I'm gonna love then. But I'm a little sad to be finishing out the series. I finished out her other series first, the Duke Hunt series. So I finished that out. I think that was in 2023. I finished that one. And she has a new series that's got the Duchess and the Countess so far. Is that correct? I think those are the 2 titles. So she does have a new series coming, but you're just always like a little bit sad when you say goodbye to series that you love. The funny thing is this is the 6th book in the series. I've already read number 7. I read that one first. So it'll be fun. But I know this one has because it's part of the plot in the 7th one is this woman is like a healer, and she tries to create like some sort of tonic, and she ends up basically creating like Viagra. So that'll be fun to read. Historical Viagra. Okay, next is a book I am so excited to read, and it is A Sweet Sting of Salt by Rose Sutherland. First of all, I'm obsessed with that cover. Second of all, Aardvark Books had it, and I was really jealous that I don't have a subscription there because I wanted it so badly. But it's got like Selkie folklore in it, which if you're not familiar with the mythology of the Selkie, they're like seals who become women, and I love Selkies. So The Secret of Roninish is like a movie I adored when I was younger and still do now. And The Seduction of Water by Carol Goodman has Selkies in it, so I really like the Selkie mythology. So I'm looking forward to it. It's about a midwife, and I assume a Selkie woman who comes to her in labor, and then I think they're gonna fall in love. So I'm looking forward to that. Next from Amazon, I did order The Witch Collector. Obviously I wanted to read this, and so I was like, I'm just gonna order it from Amazon rather than from Barnes & Noble. It's got a real good map, which is very fun. And yeah, I can't wait to read it. The funny thing is it's like very wintry. So I might save this for like when it is so flippin' hot in the summer that I'm just dying to cool off to make me feel a little bit, you know, not so hot in maybe like July and August. And then I got Grimoire Girl by Hilary Burton Morgan. I actually started this one already. I'm on page 58. And this is like, I don't know how to explain it that well. So if you're familiar with Hilary Burton Morgan, she was on One Tree Hill. She played Peyton, and she's in a lot of like Lifetime movies. She was on The Walking Dead. She's married to Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who was on The Walking Dead, but also Denny from Grey's Anatomy, if you're like a OG Grey's Anatomy watcher. I haven't watched it in like 15 years, but I watched the beginning. This is like the story of, the story of the magic that's in all of our lives is the best way I can describe it. And I'm really, really enjoying it. And she's talking about creating a grimoire, which is basically like an inheritance for her children and like what she'd want to put in it. And it's really gotten me thinking about like, I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to create a book for my children that they can pass down. And I think those kind of books are very cool. I've got one right there. It's called The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady. And it's just a journal this woman took over the course of a year. And then her family like took care of it for such a long time that it actually got printed, and it's illustrated as well. But it's been a very cool book to read so far. It's kind of a quiet book. Like I'm not going to fly through it. I've been reading maybe like 10 pages, 15 pages a night, but I'm really liking it so far. Now we're gonna do book of the month. I forgot. Before we do book of the month, there's one book that I ordered that hasn't come yet, and it's Underneath It All by Kate Canterbury. It's not coming for like 4 more days. I didn't want to wait to film. So there's the beautiful cover. It's the first book in the Walsh series. I've read 2 books by Kate Canterbury. I really enjoyed them both. I actually asked this woman on Twitter who is a librarian, and she is like a romance guru. And her handle is B in her books, which Kate Canterbury to read next. And she recommended a different one, which I will get to eventually, but I really wanted to like fall in love with a series. I'm just in a series mood right now. I want to read romance series. And so it's like the first book in like a 9-book series or something crazy like that. So I was like, that's the one I'm going to get. Hopefully I'm going to just inhale this series this summer. I mean, I definitely will buy more if I love them. And then I can read the other ones that are supposedly fantastic. I mean, I'd like to read all of Kate Canterbury's books. She's a really good author. Okay, now we're moving on to book of the month. I got 4 books this month because I got 0 last month. It was my birthday month, so I let myself get 4, and I have an unbelievable amount of credits. I think after I bought 4, I still have like 16 left. So first I got The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. I talked about this in my like books I'm excited for May, and it's about time travel, but also kind of a love story about a woman who is in charge of monitoring a man who's been brought forth from the past to see what would happen with time travel, and they're going to fall in love. And I don't know if it's going to have a happy ending or not because it is not a romance. So we'll see what happens. Next, another book that I had on my most anticipated for May is The Return of Ellie Black by Emiko Jean. This is about missing girls, like in the Pacific Northwest, I think is where we are. And one of the girls who is missing returns. And this woman whose sister is missing now feels like she has to figure out what happened. So I'm looking forward to that. Very thrillery. I didn't read a thriller last month because I didn't get a book from Book of the Month, which is where I usually get my thrillers. And I felt like I needed one. So now I'm gonna have more than one. Next, I got Middle Tide by Sarah Crouch, which this was not classified as thriller, it was classified as crime fiction, which so was Northwoods, which I got a couple of months ago, and I really liked it. Northwoods read more like a procedural drama type TV show. It read kind of like an episode of like, not really like Law and Order, but like I really like Endeavor, which has like an hour and a half episodes where a crime gets solved. And that's kind of how it read, like, you know, like longer length, but procedurally. This one is also Pacific Northwest, and a body of a doctor is found hanging from a tree. And then it's about the investigation. And yeah, looking forward to that as well. And then lastly, I got Familia by Lauren E. Rico. I picked a book from this is on my TBR. Like I keep a list of all the books that Book of the Month releases. I don't want to get like a ton of books every month because I don't have time to read them. So a lot of times if it's like an add-on or something, I'll just put it on my TBR or even like one of the picks for later. And this was one on there. And I read through all the books I had on my TBR. And this was a contemporary fiction. And it's about two sisters who are separated at birth and then meet again, and what their relationship looks like after that. And I was like, well, that sounds like something I'd really like to read. And that sounds like it might be a little sad and it will be moving. And I didn't really have anything that felt like it was going to be like emotionally like sad like that, which I do like reading books like that. I mean, The Ministry of Time might be, and The Great Believers probably is going to be. Is anything else? Carrie Soto maybe. I don't know. I didn't cry during Malibu Rising, but I cried during Evelyn Hugo. So we'll see. But so this was my last pick. Those are all the books I bought to read this summer. And obviously I'm going to read more because like there's a new Laura Olympus coming out this summer. There's a Carol Goodman coming out this summer. My mind is going blank right now, but I know I have friends releasing books this summer. Oh, Cherish Reed has a book coming out this summer, Jewel Me Twice. And that's where we are. But this is what I bought for the beginning of the summer. And the crazy thing is I've been having almost like, what do you call it? Like like reading paralysis. Like I have so many good books, I don't know what to start. So I've been reading The Grimoire Girl a little bit, but like I don't know what book to start. So I asked my daughters to look at all the books and pick one, and one of them picked Lilith and handed it to me, and I was like, oh, I definitely didn't think I was gonna read Lilith first. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna read. It's very, very odd to have all these books in front of me that I'm super excited to read, and I'm like, I just don't know what to read first. So in the comments, if you'd like to let me know what you think I should read first, I would totally love it. And if you have read one of these that you absolutely adored, also tell me. If you made it this far and you don't want to write words in the comments, please put a storm cloud emoji. It seems to be calming down now, but we've got several big storm cells coming through and a chance of tornadoes during one of them, but it didn't say which one, so stay on my toes all day. As always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.